Um, Vati was very receptive to my work, and we've been cooperating like that ever since. And then I ended up approaching Sandus K. I've been on Don't Give Up Skeleton podcast, and I've kind of been around now. I've done some Reddit translation posts, and it's been quite the thrilling year, I would say, since I first saw that Ring City trailer reaction. And yeah, that's how I ended up getting here.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you find your way here.
I've joined the collective, yay.
But Lokey, I'm just going to have to correct you on something, because I've been informed repeatedly, often very aggressively and condescendingly, that these games are written in English first. And I don't know why people would insist something like that for years and years and years, and constantly tell me to fuck off and kill myself when I said otherwise. If it was something that was, say, easily disprovable by publicly available information on Frog Nation's website, I don't know why they would do that, Lokey.
Well, can I just interject for a second?
Give us the defense.
This is more of a message to everyone. You don't really need a reason to tell Richard to fuck off and kill himself.
That's true. I am the community stress ball. Like, for reference, it literally says on Frog Nation's website, and this has been, like, it's just on the blog that they keep, that, yeah, we do English translations based on a Japanese script that we're given. Like, it's very direct.
Yeah, you showed me that link too, and I've read through it, and there's nothing in there that's honestly out of the ordinary for a Japanese game getting localized. Yes. Like, as far as I'm familiar with the process, that's exactly how it goes.
There are people who work in translation who have studied it, and they've said the same thing. Like, yeah, this is just standard. Why do you keep insisting it's written in English first? I don't understand this.
Well, and the answer is because it's dubbed first.
Yeah, it's dubbed first. That's the thing. That's an aesthetic choice, and it's not unique to the Souls series.
But Miyazaki speaks English.
That's true, and he writes the script himself by hand.
In Japanese.
Actually, I'm just gonna interrupt you guys again.
Yeah.
It's a known fact that Miyazaki writes the original script in Russian.
Irithila's Soviet Londo confirmed. Just saying, it's communist propaganda. That's what Dark Souls is. That's all it is.
That's why you become a Red Phantom.
Exactly. The real Red Scare.
The Red Phantoms are the spectre haunting Europe. It all makes sense.
Richard, the painted worlds are the gulags.
Oh no! Oh no! I was gonna say Siberia, but oh no!
But yeah. So, for example, the Souls series is not the only series that does the English dub for the Japanese release. If you want a good example that's reasonably well known, the very first release of Resident Evil that everyone makes fun of because it's got really bad acting and really bad dialogue and it's extremely unnaturally written. That's because that's the same dub that Japan got. There's no Japanese vocal version of the first Resident Evil game prior to the remake that they did.
And they did the same thing with Demon Souls, wasn't it? Because I believe Demon Souls was only released in Japan for a bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was only in Japan. It only came out in the West because there was fan pressure to do it. And there's a lot of other games that do that because it's an aesthetic decision. They're trying to create the look and feel of this is like anime. Like with Resident Evil, the idea is this is like you're watching an American horror movie. So we have these American who are probably Canadian actors in it. And, we have the dialogue is all in English and it doesn't matter that they can't act and the dialogue is atrocious. Because as long as we get the aesthetic across that this is a Western product. That's why it's written that way. Yeah.
Well, most Japanese players won't notice the difference in the nuance when it comes to English acting. It's something that you're never going to have that problem with it. At least in my experience, it's something where it's oh yeah, that's good English, and then you'll have an American look at it. And it's the same thing when you hear you hear all the weebs talk about speaking Japanese and stuff oh god, I would hate to have to do that publicly oh boy.
Yeah.
So the purpose of this podcast is something that I actually really am curious about is the differences between the English and the Japanese texts. But
Oh, boy.
obviously, yeah, but I don't speak any Japanese. Well, I speak like 10 words of Japanese, but that's not enough to
You said
understand
you studied, I believe.
yeah,
Correct?
yeah, I studied, well, that's all I remember, 10 words. I studied it for like a year, like 8 years ago.
Ah, I
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, so it doesn't really count. Though I did pass and it was a very, very fun class.
Cool.
Um, yeah. So,
Do you just want to hear my thoughts as far as the localizations go, like for the
Yeah,
series as a
maybe
whole?
game by game.
Sure. Well, if you ask me, Demon Souls and Dark Souls 1 easily have of all the ones I've looked at, they easily have the worst localizations. Just no question in my book. Um, I would argue that's partially because the Souls brand wasn't established by that point. That's my working theory. It's just you could just tell by the number of objective errors and some moments that you just aren't trying. Like, for example, I'll give a good example. I did this in one of my translation posts where I put up, I think it was like Ornstein's ring or something like that, and it talks about his spear and what his spear could do. And in Dark Souls 1, the localization put it as that spear even cut boulders in half. And you're like, it kind of sounds a little bit generic, but okay. Well, in Dark Souls 3, where it was translated better, if I recall, and in the original Japanese, it said that that the spear pierced stone scales. So I don't know how someone saw the word stone, didn't see scales, and then was like, cut a boulder. Like, how do you get pierced to cut? Like, there.
yeah.
That moment is where I'm like, okay, someone just glanced and didn't even try. Like, and I don't know what's going through their heads. I'm not that familiar with the business to its details, so I have no idea what they're going through or what they're thinking when they make some of these choices. But it's stuff like that where I'm just like, it just comes off as lazy.
So is the Japanese text for Ornstein's spear the same in both versions?
For example, when you see a lot of stuff that are different, let's say, let's take Night King Rendell for example. I believe his ring in Dark Souls 1 says something like he could even stand up to wyverns or something, the flying dragons, the drakes.
Yeah.
In Dark Souls 1. In 3, that ring says that even a drake couldn't like rip him apart or slash him apart with its claws or whatever, because the ring of steel protection, he's got the steel. The Dark Souls 3 version of that ring and the Dark Souls 1 ring have very different English texts, but their Japanese texts are extremely similar. Like, there's only like a few minor differences to how they do that, and that's true for a lot of items that are from Dark Souls 1 and carry over to 3. It really emphasizes how much the localizations have improved from 1 to 3, because you can see what it looks like when it's translated more accurately.
Huh, cool.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. It's like, okay, so he goes from being able to stand up to drakes to just being able to withstand getting attacked by them, and you can see how that completely flips over the meaning.
Yeah.
And it's not that the two are, and that's why I don't take that argument of well, both are equally valid, they're just trying to give us different aspects of the lore. No, they often are contradictory between the two languages at their worst and sometimes even their best. And you can see that most obviously in 3, where the Japanese often, for many items, doesn't change that much, but the English has radically changed. And that's not just a matter of From Software being like, let's give the English fans some unique lore information.
It is like an example of that would be the Ringed City itself, because like you mentioned that like the Ringed City sort of was kind of your jumping on point for Dark Souls 3. That like in the Japanese script, the dark sign that we have is called the Dark Ring. And obviously, like back when they localized it as Dark Sign, they didn't know there was going to be this Ringed City DLC like 7 years later. So when the Ringed City finally showed up, in Japanese, if you know it as the Dark Ring, the idea of the Ringed City, City of the Ring, it's calling it like City of the Dark Sign. That's the sort of nuance they're going for. Absolutely doesn't come across in English at all, and it's just extremely confusing. Are you still there? Oh no. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? You mentioned that like the Ring City was kind of your jumping on point for Dark Souls
Yes.
3. That like in the Japanese script, the dark sign that we have is called the Dark Ring.
Yes. Yep. Like it's literally like if I like it literally if you were to hear someone say that out loud, it would be like Daku Ring. It's literally just written in katakana like that. So there's no like anything, and it was changed to dark sign, and that isn't to say that isn't in the Japanese. There is a Japanese phrase, I think it's used more in 2, where it does in fact mean something like the sign of the dark, the mark of the dark, like proof of the dark, I think would be another good one. And it's the same idea as what the dark sign is, but the idea of that ring, that image of the ring, is much more prominent in the for instance the Dark Souls 1 Japanese version of the cinematic. It still has that English narration, but the subtitles you're seeing give you a different idea. I also mentioned this, I think, in my Islith translation post once. The Dark Souls 1 cinematic removes some things too, such as there's this part where you see sort of all the hollows or whatever you want to call them in the opening when they're at the flame and they're kind of just loitering around, and then it cuts to showing you the lords. During that very scene where it's like, I think what was it the narrator says, like then from the dark they came and found the souls of lords within the flame.
Uh-oh. We lost someone. Oh no, it's Richard.
Good thing I stopped before continuing. Oh boy. Hopefully he'll be able to come back quickly enough. You only have me till 3 a.m. Like, oh no.
Oh no, only 5 more hours. Come on, Richard.
We gotta really make this count.
Yeah. It was so funny though when we did the podcast with Jeremy.
Mm-hmm.
In my head, I thought that because we asked Twitter questions in the beginning, and then we talked about Maria lore, and in my head I'm like, oh, in the end I could ask the questions that were not addressed.
Mm-hmm.
But then unfortunately after 3 hours he had to leave.
I see.
How rude.
How rude. How rude. He has a life.
Yeah, how dare he.
See, all those normies, man.
I know, right?
Fucking normies. Okay, you're still recording this. That's the best part.
It's recording. It is.
Like whenever there's like a cut, you just like put that in. Fucking normies. Skip to the next thing.
Yeah.
Oh god, I'm digging my hole.
Yeah,
oh,
so you better be careful what you say. It's recorded.
Hey, baby. I hear your boyfriend's out tonight. No. In Dark Souls. Except Sullivan. He's a sweetie.
Yeah. He just stands at the cathedral the entire time. He's like, I've been waiting for you, friend. Give me a hug.
I've been in this stance, waiting for hours.
Yeah.
Finally.
He's like, I haven't seen a human in 4 years. Kind of like Richard. Oh.
He's still trying.
Richie,
still trying.
Richie, we see you. No, I don't need to invite him or anything. Okay, he's here. We see your icon, Richie, but we do not hear you.
Just wrote that. No, but I was rather surprised with the remaster, just because one, I think they did terrible job marketing it, honestly, just because they called it a remaster, because everyone has a different idea of what it means, especially because
she's like, you guys are talking shit about the remaster. Gone.
Gone. I think one of the biggest mistakes they did was the what's it called? Yeah, the marketing with the remaster name, because I'm like, everyone has a different idea of that.
Oh yeah?
Well, yeah, think about it, because like when Shadow of the Colossus came out, it was also called a remaster for the longest time. Now everyone calls it the remake or whatever. But it was also called remaster the longest time. So now, wait, is a remaster standard now basically where you redo the whole game with full assets? Because a lot of people thought that when they saw the Dark Souls 1 trailer.
That's
that
interesting, because I thought remaster was literally like put it in a package so it can play on another console.
And well, that's what some people have, and that's my point, is that everyone has a different idea because it's marketed so inconsistently. And when you start with your trailer of this literally like next gen CGI light the bonfire scene for your trailer, you're really setting expectations high for what this is going to be. So again, I think it was terrible marketing decision. Now, will this be like Shadow of Colossus, and they're going to release this quote unquote remaster, and then like 2 years down the line, they're going to be like, oh, we were developing a remake? Maybe. We don't know. Who knows?
Sorry, the internet broke. It's
The
back now.
internet broke.
Well, Richard, while
The
you
whole
were
thing just went
gone,
offline.
we actually finished the podcast while you were away.
That's right.
The whole podcast.
That's okay.
Without. All right, so are we all set on the end so I can continue from that cliffhanger?
Oh, Jesus, sorry. I thought you would probably just have kept talking.
No, I literally, like, as soon as we lost you, I stopped
okay.
after
We
the
started
thing.
talking
Yeah,
shit
alright.
about you as soon as
Sorry.
we lost you. I'm like, poor Richard. He's like, sorry. We've been talking shit about you for 15 minutes, Richard.
That's okay. That's okay.
That's
Has he
normal.
been gone for 15 minutes? Oh, no.
I don't know how long I was gone. It just dropped out, and I said to sit there pressing refresh until it came back again.
Yeah.
Aw.
I hate that. Happened with a friend of mine, too. We had the same
Yeah.
problem. One of us kept on losing the other, and it was like, we had to just restart everything.
It never
Yeah.
happens to me because I live in a civilized country with civilized
true.
internet.
Oh, I see. Lucky you, you
Yeah.
civilized person.
And actually, I made sure that everything goes smoothly today because my laptop is wired. It has a cable.
I see.
I went that far. Extra step. You know?
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's security, all right. We're going back to the 80s.
Yeah. And the cable, it has an adapter because Mac doesn't like regular cables. So it has a little adapter and it's very cute.
Okay. So where was I on that? I was talking about the cinematic with the line. Yes, okay, so and found the souls of lords within the flame. So the problem becomes that line is for most part accurate, but it misses one critical part. It's that there's this talk, this little small innocuous line where it's like they, and it's like they're animals basically is what they're being described as in the Japanese. And it says that they were captivated by fire, basically. They were attracted or captivated by the fire, and they approached it, and that's how they found the Lord's souls. And that's the key, because that's their motivation. And it comes up again, most notably in Dark Souls 3's The Painted World, when the painter ends up talking about how you have to know fire, but she says you can't be captivated by fire. That's her mother's advice to her, is the idea. And that's the same concept that Miyazaki and From Software have been touching upon throughout the games. You see this, for instance, the concept behind the charm spell, that pyromancy, what's it called? Undead Rapport. Or Rapport in 3. But I lost him again.
Here, Richard is like, I don't want to be here. I bet his internet is fine. He just keeps leaving. Well, it's okay. You can keep talking. He'll be back.
All right, so
eventually.
just cut this small part out. I'll keep babbling.
No,
so
no,
the
it's
idea-
staying in.
Yeah. So the idea is that that's staying in. Well, yeah, because the way if I remember right, she says it in a little weird way in the localization too, but it very much is a straightforward. It's very you have to know you can't be captivated by it, and that's the simplest way I could translate that for you. And you notice this a lot is that some of the lines may be confusing, not necessarily because you can't decipher the information, because it's worded in a way, often with this old English sort of filter on top of. And fans should realize that when it comes to the Japanese script is very modern. It's pretty modern English. I'm sorry, modern Japanese. There isn't. See, he confirmed it. English first. But it's very modern Japanese. Like you don't have Goff saying things like "Thou art the one who slay Artorias" or something like that. He just kind of it's like, "Oh, so you're the guy who helped my friend Artorias?" Okay. And for the sake of not exaggerating, the dialogue is very plain and straightforward. You don't have Goff saying things like 3 scores of our own whenever for every dragon they slayed. It's just as simple. It's this vague number of a lot, but apparently just saying a lot people died to kill a dragon was apparently too simple. So it's like, let's just say something. Well, what are we going to say? Well, we'll say something that sounds vaguely like a period piece. Okay, 3 scores. How does that sound? Okay, that's an arbitrary number, but let's go with it. And that's sort of how it goes. And I remember describing this on a podcast, another podcast. I forget, maybe it was Santa's Case. No. Maybe it was Don't Give Up Skeletons. But I had said that the problem that happens with the English script a lot, with the localization, and this permeates all the games. It's not just a Dark Souls 1 or a Dark Souls 3 problem. All the games have this to some extent, where there's flowery language.
Mhm.
It's often these dramatic words, these really sort of sophisticated vocabulary that you'll have characters say and use and hear. And obviously, they're trying to also integrate that into the old English type of feel. So they try to pick these poetic words. So it sounds like you can have them on a Shakespeare play. Well, there comes a problem with that, and that is that nobody understands what the hell you're saying.
Yeah.
And even worse is when they understand what you're saying, they have no idea if what you're saying is actually what they interpreted it to be.
Yeah.
There are plenty of examples of that also being a problem. And it's one of the reasons why it so shocks me. For instance, Alvina. Alvina was a character who in the Japanese script is very straight and to the point. But then you hear her in the English and she's a walking soliloquy. And it's ridiculous. Oh, you vile heathen! And all these other extra add-on words that do nothing. And it just makes the line drag on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and you could say you could perfectly like what Alvina says and what she thinks, and this goes back to my point on the subjective thing, but it completely changes how her character comes off. Your impression of her and what she says. She's very straight to the point on it. You betray us, we'll fuck you up. That's literally basically what she's getting at. In the English, she starts meandering in her words to get to that point. But it just completely misses the goal that, in my opinion, that localization should have, which is to give that experience across all language barriers to the best possible ability. Now, I'm not saying that you can always achieve that. For instance, the Japanese, essentially all the Japanese cultural items in Dark Souls, those are quite appropriately, and I think the localization was very nice to leave those pretty much preserved as what their Japanese would be. You may not always get all the references, but if you do some research and you look it up, or you try to learn a little bit about the culture, it's fine. That's perfectly acceptable in my opinion. I think many fans should debate and think more about what they want actually brought over to their culture. I think it's very demeaning to say that fans won't get this cultural concept, so therefore we have to kind of translate it out completely. That sounds extremely demeaning. Because you should always assume the best from your fans. Now, does that mean you have to make things ridiculously overcomplicated in your no, of course not. But look at something like Bloodborne. It uses something that uses some heady ideas and terms in it. But it from what I've seen of the script so far, it more or less keeps those in. That's not something that you have to kind of like dumb down for your audience. They can understand that it's Lovecraft and that they should be aware of what it means to be in Lovecraft.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing should go for Souls. And there's not many, you could argue, Japanese specific cultural references in Souls. So that becomes a huge counter to that argument of that they won't get it. Because again, besides those Japanese items I've pointed out, most of those things in concepts in Souls are rather universal. I would argue it's part of the reason that Dark Souls resonates with so many people is because many of its ideas and its themes are archetypical in nature. They're not, or archetypical in nature. They're not, what should I say, tailored to a very specific ideology or culture.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you.
No problem.
Fucking Richard! God damn it, this is why I bully him! Do you understand now? He deserves every bit of it.
I see. Well, it's his internet problems.
Yeah. Let me compose myself. Because also in our podcast relationship with Richard, he has a much better memory than me for these things. That's why we need him here. And
Exactly.
he's just like leaving me hanging.
You guys make a funny duo, to be honest, so it really works out well.
That's because I fucking hate him. I'm not joking. That's pure hate in those podcasts. No, I'm joking.
That professional relationship.
Oh, man.
Yeah, definitely. I hope it succeeds because honestly, I think it's going to be really good.
I kind of hope that it fails and From closes down because I can't keep doing these podcasts. I have a life. I have a job. It's like, this is like my downtime, and I'm spending all my time doing and editing podcasts. It's not normal, irrational human behavior. So they need to close down From. This needs to stop so I can sleep.
Okay, I am now recording again. It is 1:45 after, so this is like 2 hours after it conked out. I didn't think I was going to be able to get back on at all. I thought it was going to be down until like 6 PM or something. I think like a pole might have fallen over or something. There's like been a whole lot of storms lately, so I think maybe like a tower is out. Weirdly, like some websites would work and others wouldn't, so I could get on Google and search for things but not actually look at them.